This is Planet Music.
Welcome to Planet Music from the makers of Planet Marzipan.
In a streaming world, we're proud to be a podcast that celebrates the art of the album. Hello, welcome to Planet Music. We have reassembled the gang, so I'm Meza. I'm here with my good friend.
It's Craig.
It's Craig.
It's Craig. I'm here.
And
Gray.
And Gray. And
Michael.
Mikey. Welcome back, guys. Mikey.
Mikey. As long as it's not Mickey, I'm fine.
Okay. All right, Mickey.
You're so fine. You blow my mind.
Oh, no. No.
He hates it.
Don't bring Tony Basil into things, please.
Anyway, we're not here to talk about Tony Basil. As you can see from the title of the episode, we are tackling Pink Floyd's A Momentary Lapse of Reason, which is a pick of one of the gang. So who wants to own up to that?
My fault.
Yeah, all your fault. Momentary Lapse of Reason was released on the 7th of September 1987. How old was Craig on the 7th of September 1987?
It was 1 week before my 15th birthday.
Ooh.
So I was 14.
Okay. You didn't buy it then, did you?
No, but I heard it very soon afterwards.
Okay, cool. I'm sure we'll come on to that story.
Oh, yeah.
We'll start with a entry from Wikipedia. So, A Momentary Lapse of Reason is the 13th studio album by the English progressive rock band Pink Floyd, released in the UK on the 7th of September 1987 by EMI, and the following day in the US on Columbia. It was recorded primarily on the converted houseboat Astoria, belonging to guitarist David Gilmour. A Momentary Lapse of Reason was the first Pink Floyd album recorded without the founding member Roger Waters, who departed in 1985. The production was marred by legal fights over the rights to the Pink Floyd name, which were not resolved until several months after release. It also saw the return of keyboardist and founding member Richard Wright, who was fired by Waters during the recording of The Wall in 1979. Wright returned as a session player. Unlike most of Pink Floyd's preceding studio records, A Momentary Lapse of Reason is not a concept album. It includes writing contributions from outside songwriters following Gilmour's decision to include material once intended for his third solo album. The album was promoted by 3 singles, the double A-side Learning to Fly and Terminal Frost, On the Turning Away, and One Slip. Do we want to briefly talk about where Pink Floyd were?
Well, you might as well get some context.
Can we do it briefly?
Well, you've done lots of online stuff, so somebody want to take this up?
Oh well, it's one of those things because no matter what we're going to say, we're going to kind of get it wrong.
Oh no! So basically, Roger Waters had said you can't continue to operate under the name Pink Floyd. And David Gilmour and I think Nick Mason and the legal team had said, actually, I think you'll find if you look at the contractual obligations here, you've been kicked out. You are not part of Pink Floyd. We own the name. We own the entity. Tough.
Well, he left.
He didn't get kicked.
He left. He wasn't kicked out.
And
I think there was the legal team looked into it and there was no formal agreement for Pink Floyd, which is how they got around it, is my take on what I've read.
Yeah.
Yes, I think they were basically saying a verbal agreement was good enough for the legal side to say, there's no standing for it.
But I don't recall, I mean, now it's pretty obvious, but I don't recall really reading that the stuff was originally for Gilmour's third solo album.
no, I don't recall that. I do recall the huge... There was a big thing about it being a Pink Floyd album and whether or not it was. I don't remember it having been a solo album that became Pink Floyd.
that's what seems to be hinted in a lot of interviews and things like that. That a lot of the tracks, or some of the tracks, were being written for a Gilmour album, and there's some of the tracks which were actually like versions of which are quite old. I think
at the time, or is that
Terminal Frost is really
at the time?
Terminal Frost and I think Yet Another Movie are quite have been hanging around for almost 10 years. I think he'd said.
I mean, there are more outside writers on this album than there are on any other Pink Floyd album, I would say.
And there are more session players on it than there are Pink Floyd members.
There's fewer members of Pink Floyd on this album than there are on any other Pink Floyd album as well. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, Roger was he was in the position where I think he was pretty much forced into like officially resigning from the band. And as soon as that happened, then they could move on and get it, because they still had record contracts in place.
Yeah.
So I don't think they were like, I think they weren't pressurized to make the album, and I think it's something they wanted to do.
Yeah, and I think part of that was the justification for them continuing under the Pink Floyd name, that there was a contractual obligation to do an album, and if he wasn't part of the band, he wouldn't be part of the Pink Floyd machine going forward.
Right.
I think that was how they did it, and from what I read elsewhere, when the tour was ongoing and the discussions were still going, because I mean, it's crazy. So you talk about the dates of release of the album: 7th of September for the UK release, 8th of September for the US release, and I think the tour started on the 9th.
Right.
The tour started the day, within days of the album coming out. And then throughout that, they were still having fights, but Roger was doing his tour and they were playing the same cities at some occasions. He had a ban.
Very different venues.
Well, very different, but he also had a ban on Pink Floyd members attending his shows. They literally weren't allowed in the building.
Well, but he reputedly turned up at the Astoria twice during recording.
Yeah, with his wife.
Yeah.
And then there was the basically, I think the where it all got to the point where it was finished was the lawyers said, there is you have left the band. Pink Floyd will continue and will satisfy their contractual obligation and release an album. If you continue fighting this, we will sue you for not actually fulfilling your contractual obligations, and you will be run into the ground. And at that point, he went, "Okay, I give up."
Yeah, and that's the point where he actually signed his resignation letter from the band, because if he didn't perform or write on the album, like I say, they were gonna take pretty much the shirt off his back.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, the last album before this was The Final Cut, which is a very different record, isn't it?
Yeah, and again, on in a different aspect, that album has very, very little members of Pink Floyd on it, apart from Roger. And
True, yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
And Michael came and did so much arranging and so much kind of playing on it, and so between A Final Cut and Momentary Lapse of Reason, could you actually say that they are proper full Pink Floyd albums, considering the way that both of them were made? They are, but this is where purists can start kicking each other.
Yeah.
They were released under the Pink Floyd moniker, and therefore they're Pink Floyd albums. Whether or not Pink Floyd was the band we thought we knew at the time is a different matter.
Well, that's it. I mean, Roger obviously released Pros and Cons before this album came out,
and that was only a year after The Final Cut as well.
This, and I mean, he could have done the Pros and Cons, by Roger Waters, performed by, Pink Floyd at that point as well, I suppose, if he wanted to do that. But I think in his head, until Pink Floyd was dead, his solo career wasn't going to take off. And I think there was a certain amount of that playing on. It might not have necessarily been, you guys have got to stop because I think you're going to do better than me. I think he just wanted to put to bed.
Well, I mean, Radio Chaos came out in the summer before this album.
But wasn't Pros and Cons one of the concepts that he presented to the band? Yeah. So it was. That wasn't something new. So that was something he already had demoed and I had the ideas done. I know we're veering off the Momentary Lapse, but it all feeds into that where the band were at the time.
Yeah.
But contractually as well, this was part of the thing that Roger Waters wanted, and he's always wanted, is to be able to go out under the name Roger Waters, but above the Roger Waters name, he wanted Pink Floyd's, the genius behind Pink Floyd. He wanted to be able to use the Pink Floyd name, not to advertise himself as Pink Floyd, but to advertise himself from Pink Floyd.
He's still done that, hasn't he?
He didn't.
He's done the creative genius behind Pink Floyd.
He's only done that recently. He's only done that recently, but back then, because he wanted to be able to utilize the name without being. Because I think that's why he wanted Pink Floyd to be dead.
Yeah.
Because then he could play around with the name.
And I suppose as well, you've got Gilmour obviously had his, I know at that point he'd had 2 solo albums out, and I think he expected About Face to do better.
Yeah.
Following the Wall, etc. And I suppose, I mean, he would have like continued, demoing songs ready for a 3rd release. But I think there was an expectation from the record company that a Pink Floyd album was preferred over another Dave Gilmour album. So I suppose he ended up having to go down a route that was going to, both piss Roger Waters off and alleviate the record company at the same time.
Fair point. Yeah,
but you can also see that the real, can you be cynical and go, the real reason that Momentary Lapse of Reason exists is it's like the very start of the title sequences of Mission Impossible. It's lighting the touch paper for one of the biggest tours the world has ever seen, and one of the biggest financial successes of a tour at that time, because Pink Floyd had never toured on that scale at that time. They'd never any tour and stuff like that. Even like the things like The Wall was quite like a sedentary thing. It was only took place in limited venues. And
I think it was only 30. I think it was only like 30 gigs. I think in the World Tour.
The world had never seen a tour like this Pink Floyd one.
The aspiration,
the
aspiration was there for The Wall, but they didn't have the financial. Although they were successful, it was one step too far at that time.
It wasn't a production that you could take out on tour, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was it.
At that point, things would become that. Yeah.
It probably didn't help that Bob Ezrin kind of leaked the whole ending of the concert before they'd actually staged any, which I think had seriously disgruntled Waters in any case, which was why he wasn't asked back to produce the final cut.
Okay. So all of this is swirling around as the band started to record, or as I say the band, as Gilmour and a little bit of Mason started to record. I mean, Mason's confidence was absolutely shot, as was Rick Wright's, the more I read into it.
Yeah. I mean, coming into this album, they were all really, really overly paranoid about this. This has to be so perfect because they will get such a kicking if it sounds wrong. And I think the band was so nervous, and the nicest thing that they did especially is getting Rick Wright back involved later on. And I think that was inspired by his wife having a quiet word with Gilmour, wasn't it?
So I believe, but it also gave them more credibility.
Yes,
because you've got 3 members of the band.
Nick Mason actually doubted his ability to continue drumming at the point where they recording the album.
Yeah,
and also having watched a couple of interviews and what have you with various people, even during once the album was recorded and they were embedded in Toronto for however many weeks it was doing the tour prep, even at that point he was still doubting his ability to deliver on tour.
Well, I mean, they had Gary Wallace there as well, didn't they? Gary Wallace is there doing all. I mean, he's there for 2 reasons. One is backup for Mason, but also to give people something to look at, because he had the cage that he was playing in at that point, didn't he, jumping around.
And can I just take a quick sidestep? It is noticeable in the recut of the tour Blu-ray. You see a lot more of Nick Mason now and a lot less of
Gary Wallace.
Because I remember watching the video, and you would see him all over the place and on the later release, you don't see him as much.
I mean, that kit, that thing that he played, that cage that he played in, is amazing. He had to jump every time he played the drums that were right in the top of the cage, didn't he? I mean, incredible. The amount of energy he must have used every night. But anyway, that's an aside. So that's kind of where we were when the band started recording. And shall we talk about the music?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say is that the album took a bit longer to produce than they expected, because most of it was written at the Astoria, but then Bob Ezrin had said we've got a cut-off point of about 6 months, so anything after that you've got to move across to LA.
Right.
So when they continued to record across in LA, that's where you've got a lot more of the session players, because they were saying in various interviews and stuff that it was easier to just pick up the phone and find somebody locally, because what happens if Nick was in London and they needed to do stuff, and at the time I think Rick was in Italy or somewhere, so it just made more sense if they were found stuff that they needed to do to just bring some people in to do what they needed to do.
I mean, you're not just bringing some people in, you're bringing
yeah,
Jim Keltner and Carmine Apiece. I mean, that fucking hell. Steve Foreman playing percussion. These are shit hot session guys, you know.
Yeah.
Not to mention, and I've got to get him in first,
Go on.
Tony Lev. Tony Levin. Fucking hell. Amazing. Anyway. Track one.
Just before you get to the track ones,
don't know why I do this, you know.
Just
it's like Columbo episode, isn't
it? And another thing. Yeah, it spent 27 weeks in the UK charts, and it got to number 3. It was held off by another new entry on the EMI label. At number 2 was Pet Shop Boys with Actually. And
that's why you wanted to say it now.
And the number 1 spot was held by Michael Jackson with his Bad release. And that held the place for 5 weeks at number 1. So kept both of them other two off the number 1 slot. Shame.
You've got to be a little bit smug about the Pet Shop Boys being at number 2.
Yeah. We normally do this at this point of the pod, but obviously it's Pet Shop Boys. So
just to get
Michael, track 1, side 1, Signs of Life. Speak to me.
Breathe. Yeah, it's a really Pink Floyd-y album opener, isn't it? There's not really anything to say other than, ooh, this is going to take us places. The sound of somebody rowing, which was recorded on the Thames, I believe.
You just stuck the microphone out. Out the window.
Nick Mason doing some random poetry reading really low down in the mix in the background. It's very atmospheric. I think it sets the album up perfectly. I think for me, side 1 and side 2 are completely different beasts. I think side 1 is probably the more commercial and accessible side to side 2.
Yeah.
That being said, I think it was nice not to just go straight into a single opener, and just to probably alleviate people that this is a Pink Floyd record. It might not have all of Pink Floyd on the first track, but it certainly sounds like Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
Yeah, I 100% agree with Mikey there. It's an opening track that they had to do. It had to be an instrumental. It had to be atmospheric. It had to almost like alleviate the fears of the fans. Whether the second song went into a hip hop track or anything, it makes no difference. This opening track had to be what it was, and you've got something it does have a very 80s sound, but it harks back to some of the classic stuff from the 70s, and I think it's great, but it does sound very 80s.
Great.
So first of all, I think it's the first 30 seconds should have been sped up, because it takes so long to get somewhere, and I don't mean musically. I mean even so, if you're listening to it, unless you're listening to it in enclosed headphones and what have you, you hear nothing to begin with, and it builds up really, really slowly. And I get it, but it's
Dave doesn't turn up for 2.5 minutes.
I know. Now, Is it a Floyd style track? I think it is. I also think for a lot of it, for a lot of the rest of the album, it's quite misleading. And I don't know if this is because of the solo album Pink Floyd split of the material and all that kind of stuff. I know this was a co-write with Bob Ezrin, wasn't it?
Yeah.
This is quite Floydy, and it leads you down. People might have gone, "Oh, brilliant! We're getting what we want," and then there's changes. Musically, I like it because it's quite atmospheric. It sets the scene. As Craig says, although it's 80s based, it's 80s sounding with the synths and what have you, the layers and the samples work. And that to me harks back to Wish You Were Here, Dark Side of the Moon, Animals, with the layers and the sounds that they use to build things up. And that it sets the scene, but then the scene completely changes.
Well, I put the word sinister because those early deep keyboards at the beginning really sinister sounding, aren't they?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, as I said, 2.5 minutes in, Dave starts just strumming gently.
Yeah.
And we're moving back towards familiar territory there.
Yeah.
It's a great opener, I think. It's better than some of the stuff on side 2. My only problem with it is it doesn't really flow into Learning to Fly properly.
And that's kind of what I meant. It leads you one way and then you go somewhere else.
Yeah, there's not a segue. It just cuts straight to Learning to Fly.
There's a noticeable jump, isn't there?
Yeah.
They could have segued it in a bit, smoother.
Yeah. Well, on to Learning to Fly. Mikey.
I've never not liked the track, and I don't. There's going to be a few negative comments made during this podcast, and I don't mean them negatively, because fair to tell you, we loved this album when it first came out. I played side 1 of the vinyl to death, more so than side 2. Craig got his CD player long before I did, so he played the thing through. I was vinyl side 1, pick and lift, back to track 1. Side 2 very rarely got played for me, so it's only been recently when I've re-listened to this that side 2's given me a different take on where I was at in 1987. I probably didn't really properly get into this album until about 88, 89.
So Ralph did play it to death to us when this first came out.
Yeah. But I didn't pick up the vinyl. It must have been about 89. Possibly going into 90, because I definitely remember picking it up in a second-hand music store. Anyway, going off track. This was played to death on MTV and VH1 at the time, so there was no getting away from it. I loved it. Now, I think it sounds probably a little too dated. It was the sort of stuff that the likes of Eric Clapton and Chris Rea were pumping out, I think. I don't dislike it, and I love it as a song. Whether I love it as a Pink Floyd track necessarily, I don't know, because now I've got a very nitpicky Pink Floyd hat that I wear. I like to listen to a lot of their older stuff rather than their newer stuff, even though back in them days I was listening to the newer stuff rather than the older stuff. And I think over time I've kind of distanced myself away from it a little bit. Stronger tune though. It's a really good track.
Yeah. Greg?
Like Mikey, you could not in the late 80s into the early 90s with satellite TV and stuff with MTV, it was around a lot. It's funny considering that it was never a commercial success as a single. It never got
reasons.
Go on, let you jump in first.
The 7-inch single was released on a no sleeve black, like the old style jukeboxy type records. It would just be in a black sleeve on a shelf. Nobody would know who it was. The picture cover 7-inch vinyl was actually a pink vinyl, and it was only pressed to 1,000 copies. Other than that, it was on CD single. Now, in 1987, CD singles were just a new thing. Um, so the record buying public was still buying 7-inch singles, 12-inch singles. This wasn't released on a 12-inch single in the UK.
Yeah.
So the people that would have got it into the charts didn't buy it because it wasn't around.
Yeah.
And you spread 1,000 7-inch singles across the UK. There's not many, for shops to.
The other thing that doesn't help it is it came out on the same day as the album. It didn't precede the album. It came out the same day.
Yeah, I think they saw it as a promotional tool rather than a commercial tool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Interestingly,
I've got
Got to number one in Spain.
yay!
Ay caramba.
Which you can play as long as you don't have a power cut, I suppose.
Whoa.
Ooh, topical.
Steady now.
Couple of things on the
Hang on.
It's not finished yet.
People haven't talked about the music yet.
No, let him get on. Let him go.
Let him go. Hold on, Chris.
We've unleashed the Mikey. Get him on.
The sleeve cover mentions One Slip and Terminal Foster's tracks. On the 7-inch vinyl, it was only One Slip, an edited version of it. And I think at that point, they didn't even perceive that One Slip was going to be a single down the road. They'd used the same artwork to press the CD single and the 7-inch single. So the dimension of Terminal Frost as a B-side on the 7-inch didn't exist. And on the CD single, there was what they called a DYOL version, which
Do your own lead.
do your own lead, but the mix of the song mixes out the saxophone, not the guitar. So I've took that as maybe it was a mispressing, maybe it was intended, maybe it wasn't intended. If Do Your Own Lead was meant for saxophone players, I think it should have been specified.
Okay.
So I can answer that kind of. So when you're learning lead guitar and what have you, it's easier to mimic a saxophone because it can only play one note at a time than it is to try and mimic a really good guitarist who can do sweeps and all sorts of double stops and what have you. So that might have been a reason for it.
Anyway, Craig, what do you think of the song?
I've always loved it. The only thing that I find with it now, I feel it's just slightly plodding, and it could do with just a little bit more energy. And a little bit. I mean, I get it's meant to be graceful and like flight, and it's a song about Dave Gilmour having flying lessons essentially.
Yeah.
Because he was doing his flying lessons in the morning before he was going to the studio to work on the album. It's one of those things, you just do that, don't you?
As you do, yeah.
But yeah, it's a John Caron and Gilmour track. Some people have said that is it also
Bob Ezrin's. It's actually Anthony Moore wrote the lyrics for this.
Yeah. But I think musically it was John Caron and Gilmour.
John Caron and Ezrin and Gilmour.
Yeah, but musically it was actually John Caron that wrote it and brought
the original
it as a demo.
Yeah,
he brought it as a demo. So I think that's one of the reasons, jumping in, sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
I think that's one of the reasons perhaps that it does sound a little bit different. It doesn't sound like a Pink Floyd song to me. It sounds more suited to a solo album. And it's weird because being those kind of factual, experiential lyrics, it almost sounds a bit twee now.
Yeah.
It's like, but I get it. I mean, even he carried on because I think he got his pilot's license during the tour. He used the tour to fly between locations and build up hours. So it was something that was really important to him at the time. Do I like it? Yes, I do. And the reason, so I'll get a bit geeky later on, but I love his guitar tone on this album. It was phenomenal. This is the first Signs of Life. It's kind of thin guitar and what have you, but this is where he starts showing some of the new toys and gadgets and gizmos that he was using, and it really did make a difference to his sound.
Yeah. There's a lot of new technologies that they used. I think that's one of the things that it said in interviews about the 2019 remix of the album, where they've gone back and taken out some of the extra little bits and gone back to a bit more classical sounding. But one thing I was going to say about some people have said that with Learning to Fly lyrically, is it a metaphor as well for Gilmour taking the reins of Pink Floyd and becoming the leader of Pink Floyd? You know, and because his personality was never pushed forward as being that strong. Not saying that he's ever been a yes man or anything like that, but he was always seemed to be quite a relaxed, laid back guy. And now he's got the weight of Pink Floyd on his shoulders, and he's having to learn to navigate all that stuff that he never had to go through before. Because Roger was always, he was always a flag waver.
I really like it. I agree with Gray. I think it's to me, this is if this is Pink Floyd version 3, this is a one of their key tracks. I think it was a great single. It was bringing Floyd up to date, or as up to date as you could at that point. I think on the live albums it comes across really well. I much prefer the live versions, actually.
Yeah.
But again, I may have mentioned him quite a lot during this podcast, but Tony Levin on the studio version is brilliant. There's not enough real drums on this track for me, which again, on the original mix is probably the biggest complaint I've got about the album. But that's why I prefer the live versions, because obviously they're real drums on there. It's a great solo, and as we've all talked about, it's the biggest co-write of the album. It leads into, it actually does slightly segues into Dogs of War. Mikey.
Well, that's the start and the end of the album for me, because Dogs of War is just off the charts, absolutely amazing stuff. I like Floyd at its darkest, and I think this and possibly Sorrow, but probably more so this, swings it as my favorite track on the album. What I like about it is you've got this blend of what sound like strings, but obviously it's synth, mixed with what is absolutely amazing saxophone work. And I'm not always a saxophone fan. There's saxophone later on this album, which I'm not too keen on, but here...
John Helliwell playing sax from Supertramp.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's just mind-blowingly amazing. I mean, that middle section where he does his sax solo, which almost goes into a scream at the end. What's not to love? What I did notice, and I've had a look at recently, is that there's quite a few time signature changes within the song, and
there's
especially
quite a lot through the album.
Saxophone. Yeah, there's especially when the saxophone solo kicks in, which kind of reminds me of what they did with Money, because Money had a different time signature and then sped up when the guitar solo kicks in. I think there's like Craig mentioned earlier on, or it might have been Gray actually. There seems to be callbacks to past Floyd in certain aspects of the songs, and I think there's a lot of that goes on all the way through the album. There's a lot of call and response type work between Gilmour's guitar work and his singing. I just honestly, this is Floyd off at his best for me. I mean, yeah, it's
Gray. Calm him down, Gray.
It wasn't John Helliwell on this.
Who is it?
It was Scott Page, who was brought in.
Scott Page is on the tour.
He played on this album. He played this
tenor sax. In fact,
he played for this one song, and he was brought in to the sessions by John Helliwell because he was working with him in Supertramp on tour.
Right, beg your pardon.
He got invited. So for that one song,
there's also Tom Scott played alto and soprano sax on this.
Yeah. Scott Page played on this song, and that was the reason he got invited onto the tour.
Yeah, because Scott Page had really long hair, didn't he?
Yes, the mullet.
Like a mullet, that's right, yeah. Right down
the back. Whose Facebook page is I am Scott Page of Pink Floyd, would you believe?
Wow, okay.
But also, if you see Scott Page now, he's still got half of that hair. He's still got the big bouffant bit at the front. Yeah, it's just all cut at the back.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Any more to say on it, Mikey? Have you calmed down? Are you all right?
I've calmed down a bit. What I was going to say was, and I totally
Yeah.
forgot, it kind of reminds me mood-wise of Welcome to the Machine.
Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway,
I
it's
get where
amazing.
you're coming
You can
from
stop.
that,
You can stop the album there for me. It's brilliant.
We're not going to, but thanks for that.
Okay.
Craig?
Yeah, I was going to ask Ray about this. I'm positive I read somewhere that the initial dog growly effect was done on guitar, not on synth.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, it was done using because obviously he's a huge proponent of like echo and delay and all this stuff and what have you does, and he uses the tremolo arm and the way it comes back up.
Yeah, because I don't know whether was it as a mistake or was it purposeful?
I don't know.
This is not borne out on Wikipedia, which we know can be incorrect.
Oh,
On
right, okay.
Wikipedia, it said it came through a mishap in the studio when the sampling machine began playing a sample of laughter, which Gilmore thought sounded like a dog's bark.
Oh, I thought it was a guitar. I thought it was.
Yeah,
a guitar
I thought it was a guitar piece, but there you go. So,
Right,
I haven't dived too much into the old Wikipedias. But no, Dogs of War. I think it's one of those. It's a very, Pink Floyd, especially with Roger Waters and stuff. They do their politics, and they do their politics quite on the nose. This is a bit more a restrained version of doing like almost like a protesty kind of politics song about guns and politicians, and it's all about money and stuff like that. It's good, really good tune, and I think the live version of it is absolutely brilliant.
yeah,
I like the studio version, but the live, like John's already mentioned, the live versions of these tracks on Delicate Sound of Thunder, most of them are actually better than the studio versions.
without a shadow of a doubt. For me, this is where it becomes a Pink Floyd album. So you had the lie of Signs of Life, where they give you those like, we're going to tease you here. You are going to get, and then you get Learning to Fly, which is a cracking song, but definitely belongs, or definitely shows that it started off as a solo idea. The Dogs of War, that's where this is Pink Floyd. You are getting what you're getting what you asked for, and it is stunning. There's not a lot more to say about it. Mikey's waxed lyrical, and Craig's already said it, but the live version with the extended intro and outro, the solos, the extra is phenomenal. But even this version, it uses that, the Pink Floyd have always been great at that rhythmic element to drive things forward, and the samples that makes it just drags you along with it, makes it move. And this is a perfect example of what they've always been good at.
Having heard all that, this is the worst track on side one for me. It's Floyd by numbers. It's them doing what you expect them to do. I much prefer all the other 4 tracks on this side because I think they were trying to push Floyd into the 80s. I've grown to love it more through the live versions, but yeah, the next 2 are far better than this for me.
I wonder if that's because with you being
I bought it at the time. I bought this on release,
so I bought it on release as well. But also, I think with you being a little bit older.
What are you saying?
No. So you, you'd had. So for me, if I'm honest, The Wall was the first Pink Floyd album I paid much attention to, and I didn't really dig much into them until I was about maybe a year or 2 before this came out, and a friend of mine I was in a band with was a huge Floyd fan.
Yeah.
And played me all the other stuff. So Dogs of War to me was what I was used to at the time, and it was still new. Whereas what you're saying is they've done it. Leave it.
They have. It was, for me, Dogs of War falls into what Mason said. We had to do it right, and we had to make it sound like a Pink Floyd record.
Yeah. And that's what I like about it. Is what you think is, that makes, okay, that's good.
It's not bad. It's just not, it's nothing they haven't done before.
Yeah.
Whereas,
with me and Mikey, when we were coming into this album, with being teenagers, we didn't have the back catalogue because what we did, our 1987, 89 time, we were coming into the time where you had, Fleetwood Mac's Tango in the Night.
Yeah.
We didn't have Rumours as our new album. We had album, and for Pink Floyd, this was our new album to get into the catalogue, to then go back.
See, the first
So-
Floyd album I bought on release day was The Wall. So I bought The Wall when it came out. And
Were you about three?
No, I was, what was I?
Remix.
79. I was 15,
Yeah.
16. I'd got Animals, I'd got Dark Side, I'd got Wish You Were Here. Never went back any further than that at that point. But yeah, look, I love that you love it. It's, the sax in it is amazing, but it is, it's not as good as One Slip, which is next, Mikey. You're gonna have a go at this, aren't you now?
Again, no,
I'm
I'm
dared
not.
to speak
not.
about Dogs of War in that way.
I was comparing. Well, I'm just going to say One Slip. I love it. That's it. That's my review. I was comparing the two versions between the 2019 remix and the original release, and I think they are falls apart. And I don't know which one I prefer because they sound quite jarringly different. And I know the drums were pretty much newly recorded; they weren't just taken from an old session. Some of the keyboards are actually taken from live gigs.
Yeah.
So it gives it like a depth that it never had. But I was used to One Slip being, CD single, 12-inch single, and it's
The studio version, the original studio version is very tight.
Yes, it is
because of that, isn't it?
And it's full of bleeps and blops and reverb, and it's very
the sound at the beginning is the alarm on the boat, isn't it?
That's correct. Yes, it's the intruder alarm.
Yeah.
It's his burglar alarm.
Yeah, that to me was a throwback to time. I know they're not trying to replicate stuff, but there's definitely, this reminds me of Hooks all the way through this album, and it was time for me for this one. I love the song premise. I think you can read into it 1,000 ways, whether it's getting some young love up the duff and, or whether it's just a homage to love itself and, doing that one act that solidifies love for the rest of your life, or the one thing that you're going to regret for the rest of your life. It's clever, and it's very Floyd 87. It really is. No, I love it.
Cool. Craig?
Yeah, I think it's very Floyd 87, and I think it's very of its time. I do prefer the original mix of it, because John says it's much tighter. I do possess the 7-inch single of this, which I think the single didn't come out till, I think, was the single released
The last one, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it wasn't until the next year. I think it was.
No, it wasn't.
It was June 88.
It was for the tour, wasn't it?
It's for the tour.
Yeah.
So, but no, I think it's absolute cracking. Like Mikey says, you can read into it everything from like young love and pregnancy, even to the HIV crisis at the time. And there's so many potential interpretations of the track. But I think the live version of this is just stonking.
Yeah. Gray? Go on, say it.
It's not one of my favourite tracks on the album. I think it's a good song. I think it's very much a Phil Manzanera type thing.
Yeah.
It's not. Again, it's this side one tends to flip flop between Floyd and non-Floyd. And it's funny because in my head I was like, the saving grace for it is the delay guitar part. The thing that David Gilmour's really famous for is that kind of playing the notes and then letting all the echoes and the delays move around and fill up the part. Turns out he didn't actually play it. It was Michael Landau that played the delay guitar part on the song, not him. And I'm like, oh, really? So it's a great who was it earlier on in the chat said it was Chris Rea was doing things like this at the time. For me,
Like,
yeah, to me it sounds like that. It sounds like things that so many other people were doing at the time. It belongs on the album though. It's it's not a bad song. It's just everybody else can do it.
well, one thing I forgot to say is I love the bass line on it.
I would
think
have
the
said,
bass
oh,
line
sorry,
is-
stole that from me.
Oh, sorry, yes, I delved into your brain. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's brilliant. It's 80s Floyd. It's commercial. Tony Levin again. I think it's brilliant. And interestingly, when they did the what was it the remains of, I can't remember, what was the exhibition in the tours?
The remains of Pink. The mortal remains.
Mortal Remains. The clip they used, because at that point the remixed and redone Delicate Sound wasn't out. The track that they had as a teaser was one slip, and it's just, I mean, what you've all said about the live version. The live version is absolutely amazing, but I really like this studio version. And with Mikey and Craig, I think the original is better than the remix. To get about most of the album, to be honest with you, but One Slip is one of my favorite 2 tracks on the album.
Are we going to talk about the tour, or are we going to?
Yeah, a bit later on. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And that song contains the album title.
Yes, it does.
And it
Final
was,
track.
But do you know who picked the album title?
Go on.
It was Douglas Adams, as in he of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Did he not pick Division Bell? I thought he chose the Division Bell.
I was at the wrong way around. Was it the Division Bell?
It was the Division Bell that he picked, yeah.
I'll edit that out.
Yeah.
Big fuck up.
Okay, no, leave it in. I think we'll leave it in, Craig. I'll refer to it again in a minute, and then you'll have to.
Do you want to
I'll
hear
edit
some
that as well.
rejected titles for this album?
Yeah. There wasn't
Fuck
picked by
what you
Douglas
wanted.
Adams.
So some of the rejected titles for this album were Delusions of Maturity, Of Promises Broken, and Signs of Life.
But the first 2 were very of a time and mental place, weren't they?
Absolutely.
Okay, track 5, side 1, On the Turning Away. Mikey.
I don't want this to sound negative because I don't mean it to be negative. If Comfortably Numb and the Mull of Kintyre could have a child, this would be it.
I want to distance myself from that comment.
I am not. I am
Absolute
not doing
top,
anything
that.
further
Absolute
on
top.
this podcast. That's him. He's dick to me.
That's right. You're on your own there, mate.
I love it. I think it's another classic 1987 Pink Floyd song. Again, there's a lot of shifting rhythm changes in it. I think parts of it sound slightly anthemic, almost like it could be sung at like football stadiums. When the guitar solos kick in, that's just classic, isn't it? It's just Gilmour, he's best. Again, I think the original 87 mix of it sounds far superior to the remix. I think I've read that they took some of the vocals from a live performance, which just seemed a bit jarring to me.
All right.
And I think that's where there's something just doesn't fit quite right with the remix. But in its original form, I think I love it, and I actually think this is one of the songs probably the only song in this album that probably could have fit on the final cut. I know that probably sounds weird, but there's a sound to it. I think it's the guitars, but I think it could have fit very nicely on the final.
There's a part of one of the first guitar solo-y parts, which I think you're right. It sounds almost very The Wall. It's the kind of power chord.
Well, that's why I was saying Mull of Kintyre meets Comfortably Numb. I think it's just that you've got like rising vocals that build and layer like Mull of Kintyre does, and the guitar solos are as good as those on Comfortably Numb. I don't mean that in a detrimental, disrespectful way. I think this track is just in spades amazing.
Greg?
I like the tune. I think lyrically now it almost feels very naive. It's almost like a protest, an 80s protest song about, we should all look after each other better, and that kind of thing. And it was written before the Berlin Wall came down. So yeah, second single from the album. I do have the CD single of this. I think it's a good track. I like the way that this does if there's a one trick pony part of this album, is there's a few songs that Gilmour gets into the guitar solo and then gets partway through the guitar solo, then there's a time signature change. It speeds up. And you'll find that on a few of the tracks where it speeds up, and there's one of them where it speeds back down again. But no, I think it's really good. The guitars on it, everything's great. And it's absolutely corking live.
Ray?
So before I actually get on to what I think of the song, the point about that kind of naive protest song, for me, the only thing missing from that song at some points when I listen to it is the whistle at the start, because it's very along the same lines. What was the Scorpion song name when the wall came down?
Change.
Yeah, it's got that vibe to it lyrically. However,
but also at the same time as well, if you look at Roger Waters' Radio Chaos, he's got The Tide Is Turning, which is very.
So it was
music
if you think
thematically is very similar.
If you think about it, 85 to 89. You've got the changes within the Soviet bloc and all this kind of stuff. And there was all this positive vibe about the world and how things were. So, and it came through in art. If you look at anything in the late 80s, there was that positivity to it, despite the darkness to some of the other stuff.
Yeah.
For me, it could have been Sorrow, but Sorrow's got a darkness to it and a drive to it. So for me, this is the comfortably numb of the album.
Yeah.
With the solos and what have you. And I'll go back to what I said earlier. Between Final Cut, then About Face, and this, he changed his equipment a little bit each time. And this is the point, I think, where he found himself comfortable using some of the newer technology, because his sound is massive. He's got a really nice acoustic guitar playing. But when he lets rip, he lets rip, and it is. That's what the abiding memory for me from this album, from when it first came out, was how does he get that guitar sound? And it turns out it was a TC electronic and the MXR digital delay Model 2 and all that kind of stuff. And then he changed it again for the tour, which we'll come to.
Okay.
It's a fabulous song.
Those are just letters and numbers, but yes.
R2D2.
Admittedly, this is a bit Floyd by numbers. I know I said that for Dogs of War, but this is good Floyd by numbers. This is pushing it a little bit. Another co-write with Anthony Moore. As you've all said, this is outstanding, and live, it's just phenomenal. The album, the second half of the album, doesn't live up to this for me. There's a spoiler. But this is just outstanding. The first, all five, despite what I've said about Dogs of War, all 5 tracks there stand up with anything from Dark Side onwards for me. Anyway, let's turn it over. Side 2, track 1, yet another movie. Co-write with Patrick Leonard.
Patrick Leonard, what a great songwriter.
Go on, you Madonna fans, come on.
Well, back in whenever it was that I first bought this album, like I said before, side 2 for me was I think it was trying to be Floyd and not getting quite there, or whether it was because my ears were just more attuned to the more friendly side of side 1. I don't know. Now I think this track's beautiful. I think the drums and guitars that come in after the second verse are very dark and foreboding, and are we talking about this with Round and Round, or are we doing that separate?
Well, it did. I mean, effectively Round and Round at the end of this track.
Yeah, because I think the end of it needs that. It's like a wind down from the darkness of the song itself. I think it needs that cyclic ending. Otherwise, it would have felt quite bleak, I think. I love the interspersed samples from movies, which were Casablanca and One-Eyed Jacks. One-Eyed Jacks being a Western,
Yeehaw.
and I think that's alluded to in the lyrics when it says a man in black on a snow white horse turns and fades into the setting sun. I'm paraphrasing, but that's, I think it sums up a life on the big screen. It's almost like you're watching your own life pan out and end. It's a funny old song. Lyrically, it's very, for a Patrick Leonard song, it's out there. It's certainly not True Blue.
On Patrick Leonard, I'm going to say this on the pod, so we have to do it. Toy Matinee is an album that we have to review. If you've never heard Toy Matinee, dig it out. Patrick Leonard is half of Toy Matinee with Kevin Gilbert. But anyway, that's an aside.
Liam adds another one to his list of homework.
Have you never heard Toy Matinee?
No.
It's
No.
wonderful. It's a very 80s record. Mikey will love it, but it's a wonderful record. Anyway, Craig, what about this track?
For some reason, and I don't quite know why, this has always been one of my favorite tracks on the album. I just don't know whether it's the whole depth of it, the sound of it, the feel of it, the synths and everything. For me, is an atmospheric tune, not even as a Floyd tune, just as a tune in general. I really, really love this song.
Okay.
I always have. And again, like on the Turn Away, he gets to like halfway through the track, gets into a guitar solo, it speeds up, and then it slows back down again. So there's a theme of that in this album. But no, I think it's an absolute corking track. One thing that's a bit odd, because it's on the CD of Delicate Sound of Thunder, but it's not on the Blu-ray, and it's never been on the Blu-ray. And I was kicking myself, thinking, I've seen them do this live. I've seen the video doing this live, and I was just banging my head against the wall. And then I just found out, I just went digging and said, yes, it's on the Venice.
Is it
on the
right,
Venice
okay.
show?
Yeah.
It's on the Venice show, because the Venice show was a cut down version of, like, it's from 2.5 hours down to 1 hour and 45 because of the global broadcast that it was. And it's on that. So if you want to see the video of them playing it live, you can dig it out on YouTube.
It came after Learning to Fly, didn't it? In their set list, something like that.
Yeah, I think it was quite early on in the set list. I think it's about third track or something like that on that. But again, live, brilliant.
Okay, great.
So I love this, but no offense to Mr. Leonard, I think it would have benefited from staying as an instrumental as it was first designed, with the sound samples, because of exactly what Craig's saying about the depth of it and the atmospherics of it and the scale of it. It's a really fantastic piece of music. And I know on one of the other albums we were talking about, you hear about soundtracks. Mikey was saying, I wish I could hear the instrumental version, because to me it's a soundtrack. And for me, calling it yet another movie, it gives you that idea. It's this kind of anthemic soundtrack piece. And for some reason, the lyrics detract from that for me. The way that's done, I don't know, but it's an amazing piece.
It's okay. I'm neither crowing about it or saying it's awful. It's it's got some great solos in it. The bass is amazing. It's all right. It's not a patch on what's been on side 1, but it's okay. A New Machine Part 1, Terminal Frost, and A New Machine Part 2. We'll have to do them all together, won't we?
Do them all together, yeah.
Yeah.
In a wanna. Okay, then. These last 4 tracks in the album, or the 3 that we're looking at right now, are the ones that are solely credited to Dave Gilmour.
Yeah.
And I think they're probably grouped together for that reason, because I think they kind of blend well and sit well together. The vocoder use, if you listen to it now, you think, oh, he's using a vocoder. How original. In 1987, that was original. Sound effects on vocals weren't de rigueur. And certainly not for a progressive rock band. I think the lyrics are weary, I think is the word I was taking out.
I put world weary, Belchmertz.
Yeah, world weary, age weary, which is strange because, I mean, he'd have been, was he the same age or younger than what we are now when he wrote it? When
A lot
this was
younger.
put out?
Much younger. Much younger.
Exactly. So it's like, really? I should be writing about this now. I mean, he's in hip.
Back in the 80s, 40 was the new 60.
So New Machine, bookending Terminal Frost, I think was a genius idea. Terminal Frost itself, I think it's a nice piece of music. Is it Pink Floyd? Not sure. Is it Dave Gilmour? Yes. It's the first instrumental proper since Dark Side of the Moon, Any Colour You Like, and even that was part of a 3-song suite. So I don't think there's really much I can say about it. Again, this harkens back to when it first came out because I just played side one of that album to death, and this flip side was never really played for me. However, having said that, me and Craig recently went to a Brit Floyd gig, and they pulled this out, and we were, oh my God, they're playing Terminal Frost, and we sat there like kids going all the way through it. So there's certainly some love there for it. I just think as part of the album, it's a bit of a low pipe for me.
Okay, Craig?
This track couldn't be more 80s if it tried Terminal Frost, could it really? It's just, I like it. Now, I agree with Mikey. It doesn't really sound like a Pink Floyd track. The saxophone solo in it just sounds like it's something from a car advert.
Wow.
And I had a feeling back in the days that it was used, but I can't find any reference to that. I like I like the track. I think, is it a Pink Floyd track? Not so much. Is it a Gilmour track? Yes, I think it could be it's quite Gilmour-esque. I think the vocoder use in, as I used to nickname it, Welcome to the New Machine. But it is what it is. Well, really, sounds good. It effectively bookends. It's great. It fits that way. I do like Terminal Frost. Again, it's not on the Blu-ray, but it is on the live album of Delicate Sound of Thunder. And yeah, it's I would never skip it, and I do enjoy it, but it's by far not one of the best tracks on the album.
Gray?
So out of the 8 minutes and 23 seconds, there's 2 minutes and 24 seconds of absolute brilliance, and then I go and make a cup of coffee in between it.
What you mean? A New Machine Part 1 and 2?
Yeah, I love it. I think it is absolutely astounding, and I think possibly because of the way it's done, the way it was recorded, the effects that are on it, the delivery of it, it really grabs you. I think what sits in the middle of it is very 80s and very yeah. I mean, I think Mikey said it. It's Dave Gilmour, not Pink Floyd. Yeah, it's okay, but I could do without it. And like I said, I won't skip it, but I'll quite happily go make a cup of tea and come back.
Okay. I think it's a B-side at best. It's, and A New Machine, yeah, stick something decent in the middle. I might
Exactly, yeah.
It's just filling up space before we get to Sorrow, really. Sorry.
No. I think this is one of the things I mentioned earlier on, was that the saxophone for me on Dogs of War sounds just mind-blowingly amazing. Yeah, on Terminal Frost, I'm just thinking, is this just on here for filler? I just don't engage with it. I think, like I say, it's nice enough, but I just think it just brings a whole lull to the middle of that second side of the album. It's just it's a shame. It's a shame.
Yeah. But then we got a big finish because we've got Sorrow. Mikey?
Yeah, I said earlier on, I love Pink Floyd at its darkest, and what's not to love about this? The guitar intro. That's just for me, right? Pink Floyd should always be grab you in your gut and make you think. And I think if a Pink Floyd track isn't doing that, then it's not a Pink Floyd track. And this one does it for me. It gets you in the guts, touches you in the feels, and you're sitting, it engages your brain. And I think it's just absolutely stunning. I did find out just recently that his guitar intro was recorded inside the LA Memorial Sports Arena. And so fed
through the PA, wasn't it?
Huge.
Yeah.
And I think it gives it this whole sort of cavernous feel.
Yeah.
And you get that in spades. I think my only fault with it is that even though it's 8 minutes long, I think it could have gone on for at least another minute or two. I think
really?
Wow. I think it fades out a little bit too quickly for my liking. I think it should have just there's something about it that I think it just drops off too quickly for me. The 2019 version of it has a lot more Nick and Rick on it, and you can tell it has.
Yeah.
Rick has this almost like a Wurlitzer-y kind of sound going on in the background, which definitely isn't there on the original mix. I think Nick's drumming on it is amazing. I don't know whether it was re-recorded or whether it was from live shows or not, but this was the only one that I think on this album sounds better as the 29 remix.
Okay. Craig?
Considering how fast this song was recorded, because didn't Gilmour wake up from a dream and had pretty much the lyrics in his head? So from getting the lyrics in his head and recording a demo version of it, all, I think according to Nick Mason, it all happened in the space of a weekend.
It did.
And for it be such a classic track, it's just, this is when inspiration hits, and it's by far, one of the best tracks on the album, and it's absolutely stunning. And I love the live version. That's say when Mikey say no, it fades out too fast. Yeah, with the live version, it's got some balls. But there's not a lot I can say about it because it's one of my favorite Floyd tunes of all time.
Okay, great.
And bow down to the Gilmour.
It's the only thing on the album that challenges on the turning away for me. And I think some days it beats it, and it beats it hands down because the guitar sound is phenomenal. The subject matter is brilliant. The way it's delivered is amazing. It's huge. I've only ever heard that guitar sound where we the real epic, huge sound. I've only ever heard one other recording of someone doing something similar, and it was a blues guitarist who released a song, and he's done two versions of it, and one version of it has this really deep growling guitar thing that reminds me of that. And it's weird because he used, the little headless guitars with the no bodies.
Yeah.
That's what he recorded it with. It wasn't like his usual Strat or anything like that. It was a little Steinberger GL or something. And the song, what is it, 8 minutes 40 or something? 8 minutes something? 8 minutes 40.
Nearly 9 minutes, 8:48, yeah.
Doesn't feel it. Doesn't feel it in the slightest. And like Mikey says, they could put another 2 minutes on it. I'd still love it. It is everything that I love about Pink Floyd. It's dark. It's powerful. It's surprisingly quick. The way it's recorded, by sort of beats per minute. It's quite a there's quite a movement to the song.
Well, there's no real drums on the original. It's all drum machine.
None.
Yeah.
So that
there's quite
drives that
to it, and I love
metronomic
it.
beat, doesn't it?
And what a way to finish an album. and then you've got the live version, which just blows that out the water.
Yeah,
It's like,
it's, as you said, it's a great ending to the album. It's the best thing on side 2 by a country mile for me. It's still not as good as On the Turning Away in my book,
I can see.
but it's good. It's a big old finish for a Floyd record, in it, and that's what you need. And live, they played it, on both the tours, didn't they? And Gilmour still brings it out now, doesn't he, on the solo tour? So he liked it. But it's a great end to the record. Have we talked? We haven't talked. So shall we talk about the sleeve of the record briefly?
It's absolutely stunning, and I didn't realize till considerably later that it was actually a photograph, not something that had been constructed artistically.
Yeah.
Have you seen the documentary about that?
Yeah, I've seen the documentary about
They
it.
tried to do it one day, and then the weather kiboshed it, didn't it? So they had to stack all the beds back up and come back and do it again.
To do that it didn't take as long to find out. I mean, I knew by like 1990 that it was actually put the photograph there. But who else but Pink Floyd and Storm Thorgerson would have actually done that for real and not done an artistic interpretation of it? Nobody.
Well, it's the first Hypnosis sleeve they did since Animals, isn't it? Because they didn't work with Hypnosis obviously on The Wall or on Final Cut. I've got the original CD here, and I know it's got a hang glider on it, but it's so small on this picture. It just looks like I've got a black mark on my sleeve. It's
not until 2019.
I'm sure on the record, the bike he's got, it looks amazing, but on here, it's just like a black mark on the sleeve. It's bonkers.
I didn't realize how much difference there was between the rematch. So I know you've got the much bigger hang glider. Yeah. Even the horizon level is entirely different. I saw them beside each other recently, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I knew they were different, but holy shit, that is, yeah. But it's a stunning image.
Great, isn't it? Yeah.
And they got Storm to direct the video for Learning to Fly as well.
Didn't the photographer or the designer win an award for the cover?
I don't know, but
I think it definitely won an award of some sort.
I'm sure there was an award for the cover. I'll do some digging.
But using Storm again gives it that Floyd credibility, doesn't it? If they're worried about it sounding and looking like a Floyd record, it certainly does.
Definitely.
Speaking of the Learning to Fly video, that actually won the best concept video at the 1988 MTV Music Awards.
Yeah, cool.
Oh, there you go. The photographer, Robert Dowling, won a gold award at the Association of Photographers Awards for the image.
And I should think so too.
Yeah. Shall we talk briefly about the tour?
Is this where we all pet lit because we were all far too young to go and see it?
Yes.
Present could be accepted. I'd have loved to have seen that tour. I would have absolutely loved to have seen that too.
I'd have loved to be on the tour bus, listening to some of the stories they were telling in that video. Sorry.
Yeah, we played the original VHS release of
Death.
Delicate Sound of Thunder to death. I mean, that Picture Music International theme was the soundtrack of my life.
It was
between Pink Floyd, Queen, and Pet Shop Boys videos. It was like do 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 do. The swans flying over. Yeah. I digress. Yeah.
Sorry, my dog just wants to say, I don't know if you can hear him, but my dog just wants to comment on the tour. Not that he was around either, but I'm just looking. So it was 197 gigs in total. What a massive tour.
But it was over from 87 through to 89. And then it didn't really technically officially finish in and then eventually didn't finish till Nebworth in 1990. So it was quite a long old trek.
3 dates at Madison Square Garden, 2 nights at Wembley Stadium. Obviously, there's the gig in Versailles, Moscow's Olympic Stadium, and Venice. I have to say this because I've bagsied it.
Go on.
Delicate Sound of Thunder is worth it for Rachel Fury alone. And that's all I've got. That's all I've got to say. Just leave it there. Rachel Fury looks amazing.
Is she the dark-haired one?
She is the dark-haired one.
She's the one on the left.
The bob and that black dress. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yes.
I mean, it wasn't one tour though. It was billed as a number of tours, wasn't it? Because they did the Momentary Lapse of Reason tour, which was 14 months,
And then Delicate Sound.
and then they did the Another Lapse tour, which was
was it? Right. Okay.
4 months or something, 5 months. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, those backing singers were phenomenal, and if from what I've read, they made their careers out of that tour. So Durga McBroom, the girl in the middle that sang the bottom end of the harmonies and what have you, she had never done a live tour before that tour. She'd been singing in a club, doing musical theatre stuff, and got a phone call from a friend. I think her sister was in the business, and there was a couple of them got a friend. They went, "Oh, by the way, they're looking for a singer. She's good. Give her a shot." And she spent, what was it, Craig? 2 weeks on probation to see if she could last the tour.
Yeah, because she went straight up to Canada, didn't they? Because they were,
she went. Yeah, so she missed the rehearsals, and she just got.
Because she came in, they'd already been rehearsing for 2 weeks or so.
Yeah.
Before she was brought in to separate John's
Regular
girlfriend from Machan Taylor. Margaret Taylor, she's actually credited on the album, but Machan Taylor, she is. And if anybody has a look on YouTube, check out JT Curtis Music's YouTube page, because he's got a great interview with Durga McBroom and Scott Page and Machan Taylor. It was recorded at the end of COVID. It's on for about an hour and a half or so, and you will laugh your baps off because some of the trust stories
doesn't get to say a word. He doesn't get to say a word. The three of them just reminisce. It's brilliant. But also, I think the thing that comes out of it, so we're all saying that the live versions were bigger, the live versions were more free. There was one of the things that comes out of it when they were saying, because I think Durga went on to record Division Bell as well, didn't she? So, and she was in, and they were all saying in the studio, David Gilmour is, you will play this, you will do that, this is how this goes. He says, when they got live, it was a case of, your part, sing around it, fill it out, play to the audience, respond. And I think that's why it's so obvious that those versions have grown and they've developed, and there was the vocal breakdowns that happen and all sorts of things that make the songs what they are.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a live album, The Delicate Sound of Thunder is possibly the live album of any band that I've probably played the most of anything, because it's just something that I've grew up with as a teenager, and it was my entry point a lot to earlier Pink Floyd. And like I say, the versions of the songs from Momentary on there are absolutely fantastic. And like I say, Mikey says, I mean, we wore out the VHS of the tour.
I think there's only one live album I'll have played more, and I don't even play that one at all now. Whereas I'll still play Delicate, and that was Iron Maiden's Live After Death, because that was You
see, Delicate's Pulse was always a better live album for me than Delicate Sound, but now with the remix and expanded version, I think it's the other way around. Yeah. To miss off tracks like Welcome to the Machine was sacrilege in my book. But now the expanded version is brilliant, and the Blu-ray is just stunning now. I wish they'd done that, the Pulse, but they can't.
I wish the Blu-ray they'd added a lot of the stuff back on that they missed out, because the Blu-ray is still.
I don't think they have it, because I was watching it this morning. Even tracks like Signs of Life is on there, but a lot of what you get on the screen is the screen media. Yeah. Very little live stuff. So it looks to me like they probably didn't have enough footage to put them on there. But it's highly recommended.
It was recorded over 5 nights, so you would have thought.
But I don't know. I mean, what they've done with it it's unrecognizable from the original film. It's so good now.
So there's a couple of YouTubes, isn't there, where they play side by side or what have you, and when you look at it, it's like, how have they done that? Because the angles, although the angles are the same, the scope is completely different. I mean, it's phenomenal.
Yeah,
I'm sure
because it was shot on film originally and just converted to video before that. But now with modern technology, it's and having different camera angles and different things to choose.
But I think Pulse
That's
was
great.
shot on video, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because there's no widescreen of Pulse. It's, anyway, but we're here to talk about A Momentary Lapse. So, in summary, Mikey, A Momentary Lapse of Reason. Sum it up in 2 sentences. That's all you've got.
Is it the best Pink Floyd album? No.
1 sentence.
Is it
That's it.
Yes.
Okay, Craig.
Oh, I get picked on.
I grew up with it, and I still love it.
Cool. Gray.
It was a stepping stone, and it was really good at what it did.
Okay. It's the start of Pink Floyd 3.0, and it's a very worthy addition to the catalogue. But what do you think of Momentary Lapse of Reason, listeners? Join our Facebook discussion group and let us know what you think of that. What do you think of the opinions on this podcast? Come on, challenge us. But yeah, join the Planet Music Facebook group for more chat and for ideas on future episodes. What do you think of Toy Matinee if you've heard it? Tell this lot, because they've never heard it. Anyway, all that remains to be said is thank you to Mikey K.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Mikey. Thanks to Graham Tennick.
Thanks for having us.
Nice to see you, mate. Thanks to Craig Houston, whose idea this was.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm sorry, John, that it's not the Division Bell, because I know you love the Division Bell more.
I do love the Division Bell, but it's been great revisiting this. And so it was a good suggestion. It really was. And the amount of research you've all done is brilliant. But thanks very much for listening. If you like us, like and subscribe, talk to friends, publicise the pod, please. It's good night from me.
And it's good night from him.
Take care.
And stay alive. Yay! Thanks for listening
to Planet Music from the makers of Planet Marzipan.
If you like what you've heard, please like and subscribe, and maybe even join our Facebook discussion group.
You can contact us at planetmarzipanpodcast@gmail.com.